going on? Yeah, underneath.
Test. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. The ceremony will begin in a few moments. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for the National Anthem. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Before Secretary Mavis makes his remarks, he would like to recognize the recipient of the SECNAV Energy and Management Awards. These awards recognize those sailors, Marines, and civilian employees whose ingenuity and dedication have led the way to achieving aggressive energy goals with the purpose of driving change in how we think about the use of power. Marine Corps Air Station Cherry Point is being awarded the Blue Level of Achievement Award. This award recognizes a well-rounded energy and water program. Receiving the award today is Colonel Todd Ferry, Commanding Officer, Marine Corps Air Station Cherry Point. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for this award recipient. Ladies and gentlemen, the 75th Secretary of the Navy, Ray Mavis.
Afternoon, Cherry Point. And happy birthday, Marines. What the Navy and Marine Corps uniquely gives this country is presence. Around the globe, around the clock, being where we need to be, not just at the right time, but all the time. We get there faster, we stay longer, we bring everything we need with us. And because we're operating from sovereign U.S. territory, we don't have to ask any other nation's permission to get the job done. But we're America's away team. When sailors and Marines are forward deployed, doing your jobs, you're usually a long, long way from home. To get that presence, you've got to have those big gray hulls on the horizon. Those gray hulls that launch and recover aircraft and project power ashore. In 2001, the U.S. Navy had 316 ships. 7 years later, by 2008, we were down to 278 ships. The Navy put 41 ships under contract. That wasn't enough to keep our fleet from getting smaller, and it wasn't enough to keep our shipyards in business. 41 ships from 01 to 08, those 7 years. I've been there more than 7 years now. But 09 to 16, 86 ships. We've done it with a smaller top line, and we haven't done it at the expense of air. We bought 35% more aircraft, too. We'll get back to 300 ships by 2019. We'll get back to our assessed need of today of 308 by 2021. One of the great privileges, one of the great responsibilities I have in this job is to name all these ships. And each ship pays tribute to a place, a battle, a person. So this morning, Camp Lejeune, I named Bougainville, a big deck amphib, after one of the longest Marine battles in the Second World War, the Battle of Bougainville. We have other amphibs, Belleau Wood, Bataan, Iwo Jima. We name our destroyers after Navy and Marine Corps heroes. In the past few months, I've had the privilege of naming ships after Colonel Barney Barnum, Sergeant Woody Williams, Gunnery Sergeant John Basilone, General Chesty Puller. Honoring those Marines who have been great in combat, but also who have blazed the trail that everyone in the Corps follows today. And so today, we honor a Marine, both a hero in combat and a pioneer in civil rights, Lieutenant General Frank E. Petersen Jr. Frank Peterson grew up in Kansas, went to segregated schools. He enrolled in Washburn University in Topeka when he was 17 years old, and then, against his mother's wishes, enlisted in the Navy when he turned 18. President Truman had only desegregated the military 2 years before. After acing his Navy entrance exam, a recruiter told him to retake the test. He thought he had cheated. And then when he did it again, he told him that he would make a great steward because at that time, African Americans who were Marines or sailors were primarily longshoremen or laborers or stewards. In 1951, there were only 3 black officers in the U.S. Marine Corps. But Frank Peterson, motivated by the stories of the Korean War pilot, Jesse L. Brown, the Navy's first black aviator, Frank Peterson vowed to and earned his wings of gold. After first serving as a seaman apprentice and electronics technician, he entered the Naval Aviation Cadet Program in 1951 and was commissioned in 1952, joining the few, the proud, and becoming the first African American pilot to call himself a Marine. But becoming a Marine Corps officer wasn't enough to end his encounters with racism. When he went to training in Florida, he was removed from a bus because he refused to sit in the back. On his first day at Marine Corps Air Station El Toro, captain accused him of masquerading as a lieutenant, had him arrested. And then in Hawaii, a landlord refused to rent a house to him because of his race. Even though he was treated far too often as a second-class citizen, he was a first-class patriot, first-class pilot, first-class Marine. During his career, he flew more than 350 combat missions in Korea, in Vietnam. And in Vietnam, he successfully bailed out of his F-4 when it was shot down in 1968 and evaded the enemy until he could be rescued. He became the first African American to command a fighter squadron, the famous Black Knights, first to command an air group, first to command a major base. When he finally retired, 38 years after he first put on the uniform, Frank Peterson was Lieutenant General Frank Peterson, senior ranking aviator in the Marine Corps and in the Navy, known as the Silver Hawk and the Gray Eagle. And he was commander of the Combat Development Command at Quantico. He, like all great leaders, led by example. He committed himself to institutional change in order to make it better for those who followed behind him. He was a special assistant to the Commandant of the Marine Corps, where he eradicated barriers so that we could get recruits from different backgrounds, different experiences, different lives. He pointed out that promotions, job assignments, and punishments were the 3 areas where racism was most likely to rear its ugly head. So that's where he put his focus, and he made some visible improvements. In his words, the signs of those improvements are subtle. You go off a base, look around. You see a white kid and a black kid going off together to have a beer, you know you've achieved a degree of success. And he said that while was originally recalcitrant, it had led the charge and became a model for the rest of the country. But even with that, when he was asked, has there been enough progress, he would say, never. He was a pioneer. He knocked down barriers. We've continued to do that. We've continued to do that across the Marine Corps, across the Navy. Every time we've done that. When we integrated the armed forces, when we recruited larger numbers of women, when we repealed Don't Ask, Don't Tell, when we opened up all ground combat positions. Every time there were naysayers, just like Frank Peterson's flight instructor who told him he would never fly. And yet, our Navy and Marine Corps remain the most powerful expeditionary fighting force the world has ever known. We are a stronger force because we are a more diverse force. Not diversity for diversity's sake, but diversity in thought, diversity of background, diversity of experience. And for us to fight and win now and in the future, we have to recruit, train, develop from the whole of the American population, reflective of, representative of the nation we defend. So, we name destroyers after Navy and Marine Corps heroes. Destroyers can do a lot of things. Undersea warfare, surface warfare, air warfare, missile defense. They're just like Marines, capable of fighting our battles on land, on sea, and in the air. We're building a lot of these. And one of the most important things that goes with this is the sponsor of the ship. A sponsor imbues that ship with her spirit and is in communication during the lifetime of that ship. This ship is going to have a very special sponsor. Darcy Neller, wife of the Commandant of the Marine Corps, will be the sponsor of our new ship. I'm privileged to name the next destroyer, DDG 121, the USS Frank E. Petersen Jr.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce the Commanding General, 2nd Marine Aircraft Wing, Brigadier General Glavey.
Mr. Secretary, on behalf of all your Marines and sailors here at Cherry Point and across 2nd Marine Aircraft Wing, I want to say thank you for your service to our great nation and her Corps. Sir, you have battled on behalf of your Marines and sailors for 2,730 days. More service time than any other Navy Secretary for the past 95 years. Sir, during your 8 years of service, we've seen 4 Secretaries of Defense, 4 Commandants of the Marine Corps, a quadrennial defense review ×2, sequestration, shutdown of the government, and continuing revolution as the norm. That is a lot of turmoil and transition. And through all of the challenges, the Marine Corps was fortunate to have one constant, and that was your one hand at the wheel. Like all services, the Marine Corps has taken some knocks. I was there. But we've been allowed to keep our head count of over 182,000 Marines, and as we speak, we're over 184,000. And the Marines are the only service to come through sequestration with their aviation capital plan intact. Sir, you have taken care of your Marines. The Marine Corps and the nation are in your debt. Thank you so much. Dr. Peterson, ma'am, it is so great having you here along with Frank III, Gail, Dana, and Monique, Dr. Nickerson, General Peterson's sisters, nieces and nephews, Scott, Edward, and Bruce, sisters-in-law, Miss Johnny Peterson, great-grandnieces Liz and Michaela, and dear friends of the Peterson family, Colonel Anthony Manning and his wife Marcia. And also we have members of Montfort Point. Mr. Young, thank you so much for being here. Sure. I will. It's such an honor to have you all here for this celebration. Today, we are naming a transformational ship after a transformational man. A ship that will be the vanguard for the defense of this nation. A ship that will be most ready when this nation is least ready. An extremely capable ship. When I think about the legacy of General Peterson, I think about a parable in the Old Testament. On a fine day like this, the Lord said to Jeremiah, "Get up. Go down to the potter's house. You're going to learn a lesson." So Jeremiah goes to the potter's house and sees the potter working at the potter's wheel. The potter pulls a pot off the wheel. The pot is twisted and warped. So the potter balls the clay up again, puts it back on the wheel, works the clay a while, and makes a first-class vessel. Frank Emmanuel Petersen Jr. encountered a Marine Corps warped and twisted by bigotry. He, like the potter, thought the raw material was salvageable. He worked with his own two hands to save the Marine Corps from itself. He worked with his own two hands to become a gifted aviator, flying in the most hazardous conditions against a bitter foe in the frigid air of Korea, in the jungle humidity of Vietnam. Always, always leading from the front. In the 80 days he was in Korea, he flew 64 combat missions, earned 6 air medals, and the Distinguished Flying Cross, all as a second lieutenant of Marines. In Vietnam, he flew over 290 missions, awarded the Purple Heart when he was shot down over the DMZ, again, leading from the front, this time as a commanding officer of VMFA 314, the Black Knights. We are so blessed to have such a man. In my faith, we are taught the importance of personal redemption. Well, if there is personal redemption, there must also be some form of institutional redemption. In our personal lives and in the lives of our institutions, redemption can be a struggle. And although we can fall short in our efforts, we must continue to try. And so our institutions struggle for redemption and attempt recourse by naming ships, amazing ships, after even more amazing men who succeed despite institutional failings. It's not enough, but we must continue to try. Semper Fidelis, and God bless you all.
Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for the playing of Anchors Aweigh and the Marines Hymn. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for attending today's event. This concludes our ceremony.